What happened in Parliament today wasn't normal politics. It was a moment Canadians will look back on and say, that's when everything changed. This wasn't a routine question period. This wasn't the usual back and forth where both sides score little punches and walk away claiming victory. Today was different. Today, the stakes were national. The atmosphere was electric. The tension was unmistakable. And the contrast between the two men at the center of the storm, Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, was sharper than it has ever been. On one side stood Carney, calm, unshaken, and carrying himself like a leader who knows exactly where he wants to take the country. No theatrics, no shouting, just clarity, confidence, and facts that hit harder than any punchline. On the other side was Pierre Poilievre, clutching the same lines he has repeated for months. Deficits, grocery bills, credit cards. The same script, said the same way, with the same expression. But today, something was off. His attacks didn't land. His lines didn't shake the room. His energy looked forced, like someone pushing a door that just wouldn't open. And by the time the chamber fell silent after the final exchange, everyone watching understood. This wasn't just a bad day for Poilievre. This was a political meltdown caught live. Let's go through exactly how it happened.
From the moment MPs filed into the chamber, you could feel it. This day was bigger than a debate. This was the day the House would vote on one of the most consequential budgets in decades. A budget centered on sovereignty, defense expansion, clean industrial transformation, and long-term national investment. A budget that could define the Canadian economy for the next generation. Carney walked in with a look that said he had already done the math, read the room, and mapped out every possible hit Poilievre would try to land. He wasn't shaken. He wasn't rushed. He wasn't defensive. He looked like a prime minister who came prepared to deliver a country-shaping message. Poilievre, on the other hand, walked in carrying the weight of expectation. His base wanted him to deliver a knockout. His caucus needed him to break momentum. And his entire political identity depended on portraying Canada as crumbling. This was his chance to do that. But he didn't bring anything new, no fresh angle, no new argument, no new evidence. Just the same blame game, placed on repeat like a playlist stuck on shuffle. The room could feel the imbalance before the first question even started. But the first exchange made it clear. Only one side came ready.
Poilievre opened with his trademark lines. Costly deficit, national credit card, biggest shortfall ever, higher grocery bills. It was like listening to a recording from last month, and the month before that, and the one before that. He expected Carney to act defensive. He expected him to explain, justify, and scramble. Instead, Carney dismantled the entire premise with one of the simplest, cleanest responses Canadians have heard in years. Inflation? Down to 2.2%. Unemployment? Down again. Jobs? Up, continuously. Inflation within target range? For almost 2 full years. Carney didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult anyone. He didn't dance around the question. He answered it directly and then pivoted to the real historic context. Today was the day Parliament would vote for generational investments. Today wasn't about slogans. It was about shaping Canada's future. In one reply, Poilievre's attack collapsed. He needed a crisis to sell fear. Carney pointed to reality, and reality wasn't on Pierre's side. And Poilievre knew it. His next move showed it. With his deficit narrative cracked open, Poilievre tried again, this time attacking grocery prices. He brought up the same talking points: carbon tax, fuel standards, food packaging rules. But his voice lacked conviction. It sounded too familiar, too predictable, too rehearsed. Carney responded with a blow that hit harder than anything else said that day. Canadian wages have been rising faster than inflation every single month since he became Prime Minister. That one line destroyed Poilievre's entire argument. Because if people's incomes are rising faster than their costs, then the foundation of his economic collapse narrative breaks apart. Poilievre had no counter, no data, no new argument. He had to return to the script because the facts didn't align with the storyline he needed. MPs noticed. The media noticed. Viewers noticed. Even some conservatives noticed. Carney wasn't just responding, he was exposing. Cornered, Poilievre reached for his last fallback: crime. Whenever Poilievre loses economic ground, he jumps to crime. It's his standard pivot, his emergency exit, his break glass when losing strategy. He launched into claims about extortion, foreign gangs, open borders, and soft-on-crime liberals. He tried to generate fear. He tried to trigger panic. He tried to regain control. But Carney was ready. He calmly explained that the government had already introduced legislation addressing extortion, home invasion, gun violence, and organized crime. And he reminded everyone that conservatives were refusing to support the very bills designed to crack down on those issues. Carney flipped the accusation. Poilievre wasn't protecting Canadians. Poilievre was blocking solutions. The chamber shifted again. Carney looked like the adult in the room. Poilievre looked like someone shouting for effect. But the biggest strike of the day didn't come from Carney at all. Most people expected the showdown to be Carney versus Poilievre. But then François-Philippe Champagne stepped in and delivered the moment that will dominate news clips for weeks. Champagne didn't walk. He charged into the conversation with energy, confidence, and fire. He reminded the House: inflation? Down. Employment? Up. Budget? Generational. Canada? Growing at the second fastest rate in the G7. Then, in the boldest moment of the entire session, he quoted former parliamentary budget officer Kevin Page, a respected, nonpartisan voice, who said Canada must focus on growth, innovation, trade diversification, and NATO readiness, and that Parliament should approve the budget. Poilievre was trapped. One of the Conservatives' own trusted experts had effectively endorsed the government's plan. Champagne then delivered the knockout line: "We believe in Canada. Let's see if the Conservatives do." It was a challenge and a dare, and it shifted the entire atmosphere of the House. As the exchanges went on, a larger story revealed itself. Poilievre kept trying to drag the conversation back to fear and disruption. Carney kept steering it toward growth, stability, and national direction. Poilievre used the same script. Carney used real data. Poilievre appealed to anger. Carney appealed to progress. Poilievre looked like a man fighting to keep a narrative alive. Carney looked like a leader ready for the next decade. MPs on both sides could sense the momentum shift. Carney wasn't just winning a debate, he was winning the room. And Poilievre wasn't just struggling, he was unraveling under the weight of his own repetition. The contrasts became too clear to ignore, and all of it set the stage for the highest stakes moment of the day: the vote. As the historic budget vote approached, the tension inside Parliament reached a peak not seen in years. This budget wasn't just a financial document, it was a blueprint for the next era of Canada's economic identity. Billions for defense modernization, billions for innovation and industrial transformation, billions for clean energy, domestic manufacturing, and national sovereignty. For Carney, it wasn't a spending plan. It was a strategy for protecting Canada in a turbulent world. And he made that clear every time he spoke. This vote is about who we are and where we're going. Carney framed the moment as a defining test. He asked MPs to stand up and be counted, making it clear the country needed unity and vision, not hesitation and anger. It was a call to leadership, something he repeated throughout the entire session. Across the aisle, Poilievre faced a very different reality. His caucus wasn't united. Some conservatives appeared visibly uncomfortable with the endless attacks. Others looked weary of repeating the same narratives that no longer matched the economic data. Inside the conservative camp, frustrations have been bubbling for weeks. Many know the country is shifting, and Poilievre's strategy isn't adapting. Public perception is shifting too. Canadians are starting to see a pattern. Carney speaks with solutions. Poilievre speaks with slogans. And on a day when the stakes were this high, slogans weren't enough. As cameras rolled and Canadians watched live, you could feel the suspense build. Would conservatives vote against investments that experts say Canada urgently needs? Would they oppose a budget backed by economists, business leaders, provinces, and a growing portion of the public? By the time the moment arrived, it was clear. This wasn't just a fiscal decision. This was a moment that could reshape Canada's long-term trajectory. And Poilievre's team looked anything but ready. What came next sealed the day. When the final exchange wrapped up, the entire chamber felt a shift, subtle at first, then unmistakable. This wasn't just another heated question period. It was the clearest moment yet where Canadians could see the difference between a leader who understands the direction of the country and a politician still relying on recycled outrage. Carney didn't just answer questions, he controlled the entire rhythm of the room. He used facts like anchors, grounding every argument, while Poilievre scrambled to repeat talking points that suddenly felt outdated. What made the moment land so heavily wasn't Carney's tone or his confidence. Those are expected by now. It was how visibly Poilievre struggled to keep up. Every time he launched into another scripted attack, Carney responded with numbers that undercut the entire premise. Inflation trending down, wages growing faster than costs, jobs rising month after month. Poilievre didn't counter those facts. He avoided them, circling back to the same slogans as if hoping repetition could overpower reality. The chamber noticed. Government MPs leaned forward. Journalists in the gallery tapped harder on their keyboards. Even some conservatives shifted uneasily, sensing that the momentum had fully swung away from their leader. And then came Champagne's intervention, fiery, unapologetic, and perfectly timed. It didn't just reinforce Carney's position. It highlighted the widening gap between a government presenting a vision and an opposition offering only anger. By the time the speaker moved toward the day's closing remarks, the verdict was already written across the faces in the room. Carney hadn't just won the exchanges, he had redefined the tone of the national conversation. Poilievre didn't just lose points, he lost control of the narrative. And in Canadian politics, moments like that don't fade. They echo. This was one of them. What happened in Parliament today wasn't just a debate. It was a reveal. A moment where Canadians saw, with absolute clarity, who is prepared to lead this country through a decade of global uncertainty, and who is clinging to the same lines even when the facts move on. Carney didn't try to dominate the room. He simply let reality speak. Lower inflation, rising wages, growing jobs, a budget built around sovereignty, investment, and long-term national strength. He walked in with a plan. He walked out with momentum. Poilievre, meanwhile, walked in armed with anger and familiar slogans. But today, those slogans didn't land. They didn't shake the room. They didn't shift the story. Because the story had already changed. Canada isn't collapsing. It's building. And the more Carney showed that, the more Poilievre's script fell apart. Today exposed a deeper truth. Leadership isn't about who can yell the loudest. It's about who can stand in front of the country with something real to offer, something measurable, something grounded. And on a day when the stakes couldn't be higher, only one man brought that to Parliament. As the historic budget vote arrives, Canadians aren't just watching the numbers. They're watching the tone, the confidence, the direction, and they're asking themselves a simple question.
Who actually looks ready to shape the future? After today, the answer feels clearer than ever. Because Carney didn't just survive the attacks, he defined the day. And Poilievre didn't just fail to land a hit. He revealed the limits of a strategy built on repetition instead of renewal. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. This moment will echo far beyond tonight's vote. It marked a shift. It marked a turning point. And Canada felt it.